it's just I wish all the 3 hours of content we just did was live and recorded, but it's
And we're live.
cool. So
Right,
yeah,
so
so
yeah,
today I guess we're just going to focus on what? Decentralization and censor resistance between Monero and
yes,
Bitcoin.
yes. Somebody posted an interesting question on Reddit, and it's definitely. I think we've talked about this before. Just which currency is really the most decentralized currency right now? Is it? I mean, everybody defaults to Bitcoin, but is that really the case? Is that really currently the most decentralized currency, crypto? And then when you start to assess that, you realize there's a lot of elements to decentralization. I mean, there's decentralization of mining, right? Of the nodes, of development.
User base, yeah, governance. I think, it's interesting. I think while we talk about decentralization, I think the key thing to really come back to is why that's important in the first place. So let's go through all the elements of what makes Monero or Bitcoin more decentralized than the other, what aspects, and also how it relates to, censor resistance, which is really the primary property. Like that's the driving force why we want things decentralized, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was kind of the response I posted on Reddit, but nobody liked it. Yeah, basically, I mean, that's the way I see it, right? Because decentralization is really a means to an end. It's a way of achieving what we want to achieve, which is sound money that's censorship resistant. If you could do that, what's that?
I'm not logged into Reddit. I was going to go find your post.
Oh, wait, why did it say stop broadcast? Oh, no. Okay, we're still good. Never mind. So it's not really I mean, obviously, decentralization is really the only way that we know of that you could possibly achieve that goal of having a digital currency that's censorship resistant.
Right.
Right. You need to make it decentralized. Otherwise, somebody, the government can just knock on your door and say, stop processing payments, or whatever other things can be done. So decentralization is really just a means to an end of censorship resistance, right?
I totally agree. Yeah, and I think we need to focus on that as we go through all the elements of decentralization. So, I mean, what do you want to start with first on Bitcoin, between Bitcoin and Monero? I mean, right now I'm looking at the mining. So let's start with that.
Okay.
Before.
Yeah, that's like the most obvious thing I think
people
think of when they think of decentralization and crypto, right?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. It's like that's only one major component of several major components,
Right.
Like I don't really care how decentralized Ethereum's hash rate is when Vitalik can literally destroy the entire community overnight,
Exactly.
So,
right, they could have crazy hash power, but it's really
when it all follows
one guy steering the ship.
Exactly. Right. So, looking at Bitcoin's hash rate, am I still screen shared?
Yeah, I see it.
Okay, cool. So, I mean, it's kind of funny how this is what Monero's hash rate looked like when Bitmain was mining with ASICs, and we just had that huge unknown mining section taking up, like half the pie. Now we're seeing it here, like Bitcoin, BTC.com. I got to look at it, but do you know if BTC.com is Bitmain? I know Antpool is.
I don't know.
Also? I know Via BTC is a subsidiary, I think, of Roger Ver's collaboration with Bitmain because of the way they were acting when we had 2x last year, and Via BTC went ahead and launched that letter saying, we're going to hard fork and wreak havoc on the community when we were first trying to break 3K, and that tanked us to 1900. They wrote that letter with Bitmain. Yeah, and then after watching them, basically be the solo backing of, Bcash when it first forked, I think it's safe to say Via BTC is team Ver Bitmain. So looking at this chart, it's like they almost have half the hash rate. If you add Bitcoin.com, you're pretty close.
Right.
Which is kind of scary. I mean, luckily, F2 pool, that's all China. Slush pool is the only.
And it's fair to say those are all like ASIC miners, right?
Yes.
I mean, obviously.
Absolutely. So they're all ASICs, and then looking at Monero, I mean, I don't know.
Well, even with that, so going even deeper, I mean, you look at that chart; those are all different mining farms or pools, right?
Right.
And those pools are controlled by one or two people, right?
Yep.
Each, but then the ASIC chips themselves are produced by like a handful of people, so it becomes even less decentralized at that level, right?
Right, on the manufacturer level.
On the manufacturer level, and I mean, isn't that an issue as well? I mean, because you don't really know what's happening with that hardware. If it's all you guys making.
I think that ends up bubbling up though from the manufacturer level to the actual competition level, and I think that's why we see Bitmain having such a gigantic portion, because they manufacture, their transistors and chips, and so I mean, I think that would bubble up anyway.
Right.
I think you have that issue to a degree in GPU mining as well, like
right, because
your AMD, and that's it.
Right, it's really there's really only two companies producing those anyway.
Yeah, I think the major benefit in GPU mining is, one, NVIDIA and AMD, as far as we know, don't have a large mining operation, so they're not, it's not like, or else they would just supply to themselves and raise rates on everyone else. And they would have a massive edge in GPU mining, but they haven't done that yet, as far as I know. So that's a plus. And then also GPUs have been distributed for the last 20 years worldwide. So everybody running a desktop has a GPU. Every gamer has a huge one.
Right.
And so that really helps. It's not like everyone has an ASIC miner.
Yeah, computers are already distributed.
Exactly. So yeah, but that's an interesting point. I never really thought on the manufacturer level, but that's clearly what helping Bitmain.
Yeah, exactly.
And Slush Pool, I have to look, but Slush Pool does something different with their miners. They mine. I think there's like a way to vote in Slush Pool. I think you can actually. I don't know if you choose your own software to run, kind of like the Blue Mat was suggesting they change the mining software so everyone runs their own, their own rules on their own miner, and then channels the hash to the pool. This way, one person can't control the entire pool.
Right.
Pool does something interesting. I gotta look at what made them special, because I looked at that when I was thinking about getting into mining.
And we brought up that chart yesterday that showed Monero's, right?
Yeah, you had that.
Yeah, and how it changed since they changed the proof of work. Is that Monero?
This is today's hash rate distribution, and you can see it's just way more even.
Right. I think the before chart, it was like a 90% slice was unknown.
Yeah.
Which was basically the ASICs.
Exactly. And now, that 31% probably represents like, botnet mining and all other kinds of craziness.
Right. That's another thing too. Like, what do you think about that in terms of how Monero is decentralized? Like, you got these botnets.
It's cool that that's even more abstract than the what we were talking about with manufacturers mining, because now you're getting into people are mining and they don't even know they're mining because of these botnets on their computer. But you still, while it's decentralized, spread over many browsers, over many users, it's still controlled by one operator. It's basically its own little pool.
Right. So it's one big computer that's controlled by one guy, even though it's running on a lot of different people's computers.
Right. And so that really doesn't cater too much towards decentralization. It's just
right. But I think, but you have the competition of different people with different botnets. There's definitely like an economy out there of people competing.
Right. And overall, it's a net good. It's bolstering security against attacks on the network. So.
Yeah, what I thought was interesting too is that it's actually having an effect, on the economy of like DDoSing, when basically these companies get kind of hired to go DDoS. I know that was kind of popular in China. So, but instead, it's become they rather shift that computing power of the botnets rather than DDoSing and getting paid to DDoS. They rather mine Monero with it. So it's kind of interesting because it's cleaning up that
You know,
underground world of DDoSing a little bit, because it becomes more economically viable for them to just mine Monero with it.
I mean, that's literally, you know, Bitcoin and cryptocurrency incentivization at its finest.
Right, because everybody's kind of looking at it as like a negative thing. Like you got these botnets that are like burning people's computer, you know, using their
Yeah, viruses,
computing power.
get them on your computer. It's great for Monero, though. You know,
Right. No, but the flip side too, it's like there's less DDoSing now happening because people are pointing those botnets towards Monero mining.
Yeah,
it's an interesting thing too.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, I mean, at the end of the day, I know you're all Monero, but when you're looking at the charts, it's what's you see it's more decentralized, the Monero network, as far as hash rate distribution. But you know, you're also looking at Bitcoin having much more security because of ASICs and the higher hash power. You know, what do you value more? High security or decentralized and distributed hash?
Well, yeah, I mean, this goes back to what we were saying initially, which is I see decentralization as a means to an end, and the end being censorship resistance and sound money. So I see, like, as long as you're decentralized enough and your hashing power is high enough to create that security against the 51% attack, at that point, why do you need more security? Like Bitcoin is over securitized. Like you don't need, there's no amount of computing power that could overcome the hashing power of all the Bitcoin miners right now, right? Like it's an absurd amount, right? I imagine, I don't know what's going to happen, if things are going to level off, or how that whole economy is going to work out. But I mean, I don't think anybody would say Bitcoin needs more security, right?
Absolutely not. I mean, if you're looking at this right now, like look in the past year, we're currently at, we're making new all-time highs every month in hash rate. It looks like the highest point was, what's this date? June 24th was the all-time high in hash rate for Bitcoin.
Right.
I mean, it's just the competition has skyrocketed. And, you know, going off on a tangent a little bit, with this skyrocketing in hash power and the decreasing in the price, do you think that's better or worse overall for the economy in Bitcoin?
The fact that
the fact
power
that the price is dropping, but the competition is skyrocketing.
Well, I think what's happening is smaller miners are definitely it's leading to centralization among miners. It's got to be.
Yeah, well,
because the only people that could afford to continue to mine are the ones that are mining for the cheapest, right? So the ones that have the most efficient operation. It's like we were talking about yesterday. It's like the way any other monopoly forms. So whoever has the advantage, whether it's the company that's currently in the lead, whether it's a hardware advantage or cheaper electricity, or they figured out some new technology with their mining farm, you know, like, so whoever is in the lead and could afford to continue to mine as the price drops is going to be the one that continues to mine, and everybody else is just going to start to turn off their miners, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at my screen share right now, like look at the geographic distribution of hash rate on Bitcoin. China has 80%, you know, and then you have Czech Republic at 10, and then the rest is just not even close.
That's like current?
Yeah, this came out when? Yeah, June 30th, 2018.
Wow, that's incredible.
I mean, it's just China's electric is so cheap. You'd think like I know it's illegal in Venezuela, but what about Trinidad, you know, and Tobago?
Right.
That's like cheapest electricity in the world. They must run a really tight ship.
Yeah, so I mean, I think, you know, Bitcoin is just tending towards more centralization right now. And that's its current track. I mean, I don't know if that's going to change. Like we said, if they figure out
that.
What's up?
I don't know what would change that though at this point. You know,
well, like
do a proof of work algo change.
Right. There's that. I mean, like people like we were talking about yesterday, and like, you know, Fluffy Pony had even said it, like, if, you know, once ASICs become as common as like a USB stick, you know, and like they're giving away a swag at a party, that's when Bitcoin will start to become decentralized again in terms of mining, and that's just a matter of time to that happen.
Yeah, maybe. Like again, like imagine like to me that would be more like the GPU race now, where okay, you could try to mine Monero on your GPU on your computer, unless you're a nut job gamer like me running 6 cards in SLI or something. You're not going to stand a chance really, unless you mine some really new shitcoin that nobody's mining.
Right.
So I mean, at that point, people are giving ASICs out as swag. They're going to be, bottom of the line stuff. Like nobody's giving GPUs out as swag, where it's, actually going to compete. Like no one's going to give out a $700 graphic card. You know what I mean? Like as a
Right.
point of
Right.
favor. So I don't know if we'd ever get there. And then companies like Bitmain obviously have such a huge edge when you have one of the few manufacturers in the game competing to mine. To me, that's like Nvidia or AMD saying, you know what, we're going to start mining Monero. Like who would want it? Would you buy graphic cards from Nvidia at that point? Like, who knows if they start mining with them before they ship to you, even? Like that might be a little paranoid. Like,
Well, they might be doing that now, right?
like, yeah, you really don't know, but I feel like their presence would be known if they shifted in because they're massive resources.
I mean, it's just a matter of time until they start mining Monero, right? I
Yeah,
mean, it's just pure economics, unless
yeah. I mean, the only
why would it make sense? It's just like the reason why they sell, cartridges to gamers. I mean, they don't care who they're selling these things
bottom
to.
line, sure.
Right.
But at what point then? So like say that's and this is going off a little bit, but if they start doing that, if they start mining, proof of work changes are not going to fight Nvidia or AMD off. Like everybody is using graphic cards that are coming from them. So you switch the proof of work, graphics cards, they adapt to that. It's not, like an ASIC where it's just specialized at one algorithm.
And then so the argument becomes that makes Bitcoin more decentralized in the long run.
Yeah, right. Like I don't know. No, because if you can't change the proof of work algo of Bitcoin and watch people still manufacture ASICs. You're basically telling them stop doing that because you're going to lose money. Like what if they switch the proof of work algo every 3 months? You can't even design and build ASICs fast enough. I think someone figured out Bitmain takes about 4 months to get up and running in a large way with ASICs. So say you switch every 3 months, so ASICs are out, but now we're defaulting back to GPUs, which that's AMD and Nvidia, no matter how you slice it.
Right.
So, I mean, at the end of the day, maybe there's decentralization to an extent that AMD and Nvidia don't jump in,
Right, but then we also said, like all these other computers already exist out in the real world that are already out there and not controlled by AMD and Nvidia.
Sure, and like you need like at the point they jump in, I think you'd see really, adoption would be pretty high. I don't think they would control the whole network, obviously, but I think it would be probably like a Bitmain scenario now where they would have, a third of the network, a fourth, maybe, maybe half the network almost.
Yeah, I mean, there's already a lot of computing power out there. I mean, just think of it like companies as well, right? Like the Googles of the world and the Amazons
and well, also you have Intel makes CPUs, and I forgot, CPUs are almost as good as GPUs, with Monero. You can get a really high-end CPU that actually mines pretty efficiently. So then you'd have Intel, you'd have a few very large companies, which I'd rather see than just Bitmain,
Right.
So in that regard, it's better.
But so then going back to the question, because you had said security, yeah, like I don't see the security being that, not that it's not important, but I think it's important as long as you reach that threshold of where your coin isn't subject to a 51% attack. And Monero's hash rate is obviously a lot lower than a Bitcoin. But there's really no one that could easily turn their computing power, like that are mining other things, right?
Right.
That can easily now switch to this algo and start mining Monero and 51% attack it overnight because Monero is running on its own
Right, like, and that was one of the biggest risks with
Work
Bitcoin. You know, like Litecoin,
with what?
with Litecoin, you know, when they were on this, they're on, I don't know if they still are on the same algo, but you know, F2 pool, I was like, you know, people were asking about scenarios with when SegWit was being adopted, and that's when we shifted into Litecoin for a little bit because it was making progress where Bitcoin was stalling for a while. You know, but then people could have just swapped over to the Litecoin, you know, network and destroyed it.
Right.
You know,
Well, and recently we've seen these 51% attacks, right?
right, yeah, on Verge, that was wild. And there was another coin. What was it? It started with an M.
Yeah, I don't remember which ones, but how? So were those from Bitcoin ASIC miners, or no? Those were
No,
just
one Verge was an exploit in the mining algo itself because
right.
they thought it'd be cool to have like 4 or 5 different mining algorithms, you know, rotate in and out every block that's found. It then goes to the next algo or something stupid like that. And so one guy found that the difficulty is adjusted by algo, not by overall hash rate to the network. And so they started mining with the one algo, you know, very slowly. So the hash rate would drop, and then they'd mine the others as normal, so no one caught on because blocks were still relatively coming in at the same time. And then they boosted the crap out of the, you know, mining rate on the one algo after the block, after that window. I guess maybe it's like Bitcoin on Verge, where it's like, you know, every 2016 blocks or something like that, it'll adjust the difficulty. And they just murdered the one algo on Verge, and they mined like, what was it, like $20 million worth of Verge before anyone caught it.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, ridiculous.
But then it just kind of stalled out. You're not really seeing these 51%. Like everybody thought, like everything was going to be 51% attacked at that point.
Yeah, you know, I think people underestimated how hard it is to actually 51% attack a network. Like, you know,
Right.
like Charlie Lee came out with like how you what the cost would be to 51 attack each network for an hour.
Right.
You know, and like it was getting a little crazy. And I really, as far as the incentivization to do that, like like I don't see why Bitmain would ever try to kill Bitcoin until maybe the lending market grows to a point where they could short Bitcoin so heavily that it would make sense for them to destroy the entire movement. You know?
And then, but the thing is, like we saw, remember a couple of years ago, when there were pools that breached the 51% mark on Bitcoin.
Right. And
And there was the scares that there was going to be a 51% attack, and it just never happened. And then there's also like I don't think it would go down like Verge, right? I mean, if you had a pool that or a group that obtained 51% of the hashing power, and they did an attack, it's not like it destroys the entire ecosystem. It just lets them do like a double, a double spend, right? I mean,
right. Well. So I mean, once you have 51%, once you have 51% of the network, you know, and you're pushing your own blocks, this kind of goes back to the whole Bcash argument. You know, just because you have 51% of the network doesn't mean you can control the network. It's still probability. Like other people might outpace you and find a block in a second while you're still trying to, you know, chug along and find the next block.
right,
You know, so there's that issue with it. But I think going back to your point of a few years ago, the pools took it upon themselves to split and, you know, not fracture Bitcoin.
right,
I think that was before there was a lending market, and I think that to me is pretty scary now.
right.
You know, I mean,
You
like
say
the
it would be
incentive.
more of an issue today?
Yeah, I think maybe not. Like even today, it's still. I don't think the lending market is big enough. Like the volume in futures is not high enough. Like Bitmain has a, what is it? Like it's almost like worth 12 billion. I think I saw, or something insane. So you know, until they could find a way to short Bitcoin to make up $20 billion liquid, like I think we'd have to have like the volume of the gold markets. And then at that point, maybe they'd say, you know what, the incentive model doesn't align with us anymore. Let's murder Bitcoin. We can do it. We'll end up ruining everything we have here, but we'll make $30 billion in a day. You
Right.
know, and that's if they still control enough hash rate to do that. By that point, who knows? There's one company in Japan
Well, you're saying, assuming the market would crash if there was a 51% attack.
Well, yeah, I think if you want to short Bitcoin and do a massive 51% attack, and destroy consensus, well, basically they would be representing consensus, you know, and you'd have like your nodes would be calling it invalid. They would be trying to further the chain. Like
Right.
it would get pretty wild.
Right.
And people would say Bitcoin's broken. You know, they wouldn't really understand.
Yeah, yeah, they would be able to fud
Yeah,
that one.
and it would be a couple. It would be like you know, a week long scare maybe. But Bitmain would do, you know, it would profit big time.
Right.
And then it would take a while to restore faith, and people would have to start understanding how mining worked.
Right. So I think so that just shows me that the security, not that it's not, it's obviously important, but you could have all the security in the world.
Right, but it's literally like picture a security force, but that's controlled by one person. So
Right.
if they align with you to protect you, that's great. But if they turn on you, you're absolutely dead.
Right. And then even if you're super decentralized and you have all this security and this hashing power, if you're not fungible like Monero is, then what's the point? Right? Because that's another way to censor.
Well, true. I think we saw Bitmain doing that when, you know, everybody was noticing Bitmain was clearing when the mempool filled up last year and it was chaos, and you were watching, you know, Antpool mine empty blocks, and then it started mining 1 Satoshi per byte blocks. You know, and it was like, what are they doing there? Like that was totally against the incentive model of Bitcoin to take, you know, to make as much per block. And it was almost like they were siding with like whoever was spamming the network to just let the fees skyrocket as high as possible and not clear the top fees. And so the fee estimators were like, well, you want next block, you got to go higher than what we see now. And it, you know, it went nuts.
Mm-hmm. Right. That's a form of censorship, is what you're
That's a
saying.
form of censorship, sure. They're
Right.
targeting transactions.
Right. But I'm saying the other form with that, like ignoring hashing power and mining, if you can mark a coin as a, you know, as a blacklisted coin,
Oh, right, right.
now it's censored. And
Yeah.
it has nothing to do with the security of the network and the amount of miners there are and how decentralized it is. You can have all the decentralization, you know, of a highly decentralized, secure network.
Sure.
Assuming Bitcoin is that. I don't know how decentralized it actually is, but it's definitely super secure, it seems like, in terms of the hashing power.
They'll never
But you can
spend, but
you can still censor transactions because Coinbase could mark a bunch of coins and say, hey, right,
confiscation of coins.
right. So that's like really the goal is censorship resistance. Decentralization is one thing you need to do right. But even if you're doing that right and you're doing the security part right, if it's not fungible, then what are you doing all of that other stuff for?
Right, and you know, anonymity was one of the points I was going to get to. But yeah, I totally agree. I mean, a lot of exchanges have that 6-hop rule, where if you end up with tainted Bitcoins they've been following, and you send it to their exchange, and you're like the 3rd hop in transactions, and you have no idea of this, and you just say, hey, I just bought some Bitcoin somewhere and now I'm sending it to Coinbase to cash out, they'll just confiscate them if they're, you know, tainted.
Yeah.
Which I am blown away that that's legal, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
So all right, let's move on from mining. Development, your developer community.
I mean, I think Bitcoin obviously has a
big edge on.
Sure. I don't think anybody can argue with that. I mean, how many people are working on Lightning Network alone?
Oh, right? Yeah, well, that's pretty cool. Yeah, layer 2. I didn't even.
Yeah, even thinking along those lines, because you have decentralization of like the actual core developer. You know, the amount of people are working on the core protocol. Then you have the amount of developers that are working on projects that have to deal with the currency itself, that are building apps, right? So like even Monero, I mean, how many different wallets do we have? You know, we have like one Android wallet and one iOS wallet. I guess we have like one or
We
two.
got Cake Wallet. That's all we need.
We got Cake Wallet.
Shout out to Vic. Still killing it.
Vic, we'll get him on here.
Oh yeah. All right. So yeah, I think developers, obviously Bitcoin has the win. It's got a larger base. They even have several node implementations. You know, you have the Satoshi client, the core client. Uh, you know, whereas Monero, we have what do they call it now? Was it lithium? Helium hydra.
Right.
So you know, I think that'll go in the Bitcoin win column. Um, let's see, user base. You know, that's a cool topic because obviously Bitcoin has the larger community, but I think it's very easy to argue Monero has the more informed community.
Mm-hmm.
I think education in just blockchain in general is way higher in Monero because it's a much higher barrier of entry.
Right. Well, here's the thing, though, too. Like all these Bitcoin and Monero, all these cryptos, none of them are finished yet, right? They're still being built. Like, granted, people are already trying to use them as money. Not really, though. They're just
Right,
using
like
them
they
to store
satisfy.
value and speculate. But
Yeah.
they're still like, you know, you're still building Litecoin. Like, it's not really a finished product yet. We're still building all these things.
There's still a lot of
And,
friction on the network.
right. So, but that becomes a factor too. So that's not really about that. You almost want less decentralization in terms of the community and the way the community is thinking about things, right? You want kind of a more centralized team in terms of, so somebody, when they say, hey, let's go this direction, everybody can pivot and go that direction because you're
governance, right?
I'm talking about exactly. Yeah, I guess I'm getting into governance. So
yeah,
I think the advantage, the advantage, it's advantageous in the early stages of a coin to be able to pivot, just like Monero can fork every 6 months. Bitcoin can't do that, and I think it's almost it's an advantage for Monero at this point because it allows it to continue to build the infrastructure it needs and tweak things the way they're going to need to be for it to be a global reserve currency. Because you're going to reach a point where you won't be able to make those tweaks anymore.
Yeah, I do think, and you know, and that stems back to the user base being so educated. Everybody in Monero is in it for one reason. You know, they believe it's how Bitcoin should be. It's fungible, it's anonymous, and they don't. Everyone doesn't buy it just because it's anonymous. I mean, everybody buys it because they understand what it is.
Right.
You know, and what cryptocurrencies should be, and that it's closer to a censor resistant system, you know, peer-to-peer cash than Bitcoin is at this point. Well, you know what? Actually, that's unfair to say because Monero transactions can be more expensive than Bitcoin because of, you know, ring CT and the data size and all of that. But you know, back to governance, because we can hard fork every 6 months, we're adding bulletproofs next release, which I guess will be October, and that will decrease the friction in the network by 80% since that's going to be such a huge data saver.
Mm-hmm. Right. And when we saw the whole, you know, trying to adopt SegWit and then Bitcoin Cash and everybody, the Bitcoin maximalists, the spin they put on it was, well, all this debate is a great thing because it's proving how decentralized the network is because we can't agree on anything. And just like it'd be hard to change the Constitution of the United States, right? Like it's not easy to add an amendment to the Constitution because you literally need like a referendum from the entire country.
That argument is valid, and it's a great one if Bitcoin was already where it needed to be and these were minor tweaks.
Exactly.
But when you have something so integral that needs to happen or Bitcoin can never be cash, you know, like SegWit was absolutely necessary to not fracture the community, and then it ended up fracturing the community because people just wanted big blocks. I think it was funny how it all came out, and you have people like Vitalik, you know, defending Bcashers because they're in the same boat where they have massive blockchain bloat and bandwidth problems. But I thought it was funny that you have, you know, them all coming out saying, you know, we want big blocks. SegWit delivers that, and without hard forking, I never understood why they were so against it. They wanted big blocks right away, and they could have had it if they just adopted SegWit. But everything fell apart. Everything fractured. We had to go to Litecoin for a while. I think if Bitcoin had cheap transactions and didn't have those scaling issues, and maybe it was just a matter of whether we add fungibility, like to the extent Monero has it, maybe that would have been fine. You know, because all right, it's acting as it was intended almost. You know, but when it can't act as cash and we can't move forward, that to me is not a great thing. That it's, you know, so it's so immobile.
Right. Yeah, Charlie Lee during that time, it was a good way to sell Litecoin when he described it, and that's when it really started to pump. When he described Litecoin as being kind of the younger brother, or like a race car. That's what is it called? Like when you're when
you're drafting behind.
When Bitcoin. You're drafting, right? So Litecoin was basically drafting behind Bitcoin, and then just waiting to come out and make the front. But that is actually a really good point. I think that's valid, and I think Bitcoin is doing that for a lot of these other cryptocurrencies, and it's just getting it's getting beat down. It's the front runner. But then, because we could just sit behind, grow a little slower, have a little less attention out, of everybody looking at it, and be able to pivot and make these changes and grow as we need to grow.
Sure, it's a double-edged sword, you know. I mean, you're missing out on network effect like Bitcoin has, but you're able to progress because you don't have that adoption. I think I mean a lot of people don't understand, like, it's still such a big race to cheap, fast, decentralized transactions. You know, like, that's not solved yet. Like, no one does that well yet, and Lightning hopefully will. But until
nobody. We've talked about this before too, but like nobody's solved that yet. But it's not really that the market isn't really pulling that out. Like, people aren't demanding cheap transactions. It's something that we think we need to get to, because obviously it makes sense, right? It's going to be
it'll drive.
It's not like
it'll be used.
There aren't customers that are dying to use crypto for cheap transactions. It's not, because they already have other ways of doing it. They have credit cards, they have Venmo.
Right, exactly. Like, that's the whole Bcash argument is, and you'll see Roger Ver say this all the time. I used Bitcoin 15 times today. How often did you use it? Never, because I don't want to lose any Bitcoin. We're watching it go up. Like, it's funny how the majority of the community doesn't want to spend it. Even if it was cheap, most would just hold it anyway. And so if I am going to spend anything, I'm getting rid of my worthless fiat.
Exactly.
Values, and maybe is Ver 100% Bitcoin cat? Well, is he 100% crypto? He might be.
I mean, yeah, it's got to be. Or, I mean, the guy's, I'm assuming he's right. Didn't he have 100,000 Bitcoin or something?
Well, because he got in so early. I just think, like, it's interesting to me. He's not a gambling kind of guy. Like, everyone props him up as well, they used to say he was the Bitcoin Jesus because he was such an advocate for it. But, I mean, look at him now. He literally tries to destroy Bitcoin and promote Bitcoin Cash in the same tweet every tweet. And yet he owns a lot of Bitcoin still. And he's like, who does that? Like, you're 100% Monero because you believe in the project. I'm half Monero, half Bitcoin because I believe both have a role. I think Bitcoin will never be fungible. And I think it will be like the gold, and Monero will be the day-to-day cash where people don't want to disclose how much money they have in their, hot wallets. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm 100% Monero too, because of the philosophy behind it. I think it's like the true crypto, you
Right,
know.
and
So it's kind of like, yeah, I'm rooting for it. So
exactly.
even if it's like, even if it won't grow as much as Bitcoin, but I don't see how it wouldn't, because the market cap is smaller, and it definitely is going. It's definitely one of the coins that's here to stay.
Oh yeah,
It's
well,
Bitcoin. Like, so, I mean, Bitcoin, if I had to bet on one with with the most certainty that will be here in the future, obviously that would be Bitcoin, right?
right.
But when I really analyze it deeper, I see Monero as being the true crypto, and it's the #2 coin.
I definitely see it as a top 2, Monero.
Yeah. And then when I get to that point, I'm like, well, then why should it just be number one? It might as well be number one at that point, because it's #2. It's doing everything Bitcoin's doing, plus it's fungible. So you might as well be number one. But that's like that's just an extreme view.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not too extreme. Once you understand the technology, why not Monero? If they can get Lightning Network up on Monero, then why would you use Bitcoin?
Right. So let's say Lightning. Well, Lightning is live essentially today, right? I don't really.
Yeah, it's on mainnet. There's still a lot of bugs to be worked out, but people are using it.
So let's say like it was like kind of everywhere right now, but so do you think everybody be zapping around Lightning transactions?
Well, listen,
you still have the same issue where people aren't really looking to spend their digital gold.
I think at the point Lightning is actually so heavily adopted to where you have like 3 channels open and you could almost always find a route with someone without having to open a new channel. I think at that point, where like years away, and people are so confident Bitcoin's not a fly-by-night thing anymore, that yeah, I think people would be spending it because they'd have so much in it. I think
right, when the value is, but you're like, let's say Lightning was 100% functional, like, or
routing was
adopted today, right? Like you could go buy a Ferrari with it, you go buy a latte with it, Starbucks accepts it, everybody's accepting it, it's on the Lightning. Would you start beaming your Bitcoin around? Or are you going to use your fiat? I'm saying today, given the price of Bitcoin and the whole deal. What?
Yeah. I mean, at that point, I wouldn't have any fiat left. No one's going to spend, what's that law? It's like Grisham's law. It's like no one spends the hard money. They give away.
All right, so you're saying because you would go all Bitcoin at that point.
Yeah, I think
because like we've arrived.
Right.
So then you would just be spending out of pure necessity because you need to live.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, what do we say? They say, like, yeah, it breeds a saver's economy, Bitcoin.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't splurge unless, listen, if Bitcoin goes to $250,000 a coin, I'm getting 2 Ferraris. I'm going to get a his and hers Ferrari collection, and I'm going to crash the hers right into a wall and give Krista the keys. And I'm going to say, fix it with all the Bitcoin you didn't buy. What I told you. It's going to be epic.
That'd be a good video.
That'd be savage.
We'd probably actually get more than 2 views on that one.
Oh yeah, that would definitely go viral.
Oh no, we have 1 viewer right now.
Holy hell, that's got to be Vic.
We have a viewer.
Wow.
Must be Satoshi.
Oh, it's definitely Satoshi. He's like, who? Monero a top 2? Only I know that.
Oh man. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think we covered it. I mean, you have governance, user base, nodes, developers, mining, both geographically and pool wise. And the anonymity aspect of censoring transactions.
Yeah, the fact that the whole security and decentralization thing becomes moot at some point if you're not fungible and censorship resistant in that manner, because what's the point if you have the super strong network but people can still censor transactions? The other thought too is like, yes, Bitcoin has a lot more development and a lot more developers working on things, but this is back to the fact that the one that's second in line,
the draft car relationship.
Yeah, we could steal the tech. So we can't steal the tech as easy as Litecoin can, because Litecoin is literally a carbon copy of Bitcoin. But some of the bigger breakthroughs, I mean, look at we're the first ones that are implementing bulletproofs, and that was. That's what I was
going to say. I mean, that's a testament to the dev team. Like they're taking. It'd be one thing.
Those were Bitcoin cryptographers, right? I mean, what's the guy's name?
Maxwell.
Greg Maxwell, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he came up with the bulletproofs, and they were like, oh, the math works. This all checks out, and they can code it for Monero. I mean, like, their dev team is probably the second best dev team in crypto. Like, forget Dash, forget Ripple scam, forget Charlie Lee. I don't see anybody pumping out, like, how many coins are on a different protocol to begin with? Like, you have, I think Digibyte was Cryptonote, like Monero is, and then the rest are all forks off Bitcoin.
Which is also why it makes the ultimate number 2 coin, right? Because it's kind of the
Perfect
ultimate hedge, right?
Yep.
Because if something fundamentally fails with Bitcoin's protocol, the proof of work, whatever, the algorithm, then you can turn to Monero.
Great minds think alike, man. I totally agree. Why do you come in this?
We need to get somebody that doesn't agree with us on the show.
I know. Maybe the guy watching could, voice. Do we have a way for him to, like, type? Is there, like, a chat box he can hit?
I don't know. I'm not that advanced. I think there is a way on YouTube. I'm just looking at the actual Google chat, though. Wait, I wanted to talk about one other thing. There is
a Q&A.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah, we'll have to figure that out as we go.
Wait, there was a Reddit post about, what was it, the skin?
Yeah, while you look that up, I'm going to look at Monero real quick on the price.
Oh, yeah, throw the price up there.
Yeah, hold on, I'll share this. Make sure.
I know what it is. I found it. I want to talk about. Yeah, the price.
So yeah, is it? Do you see it?
Okay, close my. I don't see your screen share.
Hold on. You know what I'll do? Let me see. It says I'm screen sharing, but it doesn't look like it.
No, I don't see it.
Okay, hold on. I'll do the whole window. So, I mean, really, I'm not going to get into the TA right now. Let's do entire screen. That should work. Whoa, boy. Nope. Just turn that off. Listen, I won't do the TA right now, but if anybody's listening, if you ever want to look, take the chart, look at the last, year and a half, zoom all the way out, 1-day candles. And even with these huge corrections, we are on a huge uptrend against Bitcoin. The fact that the whole market's tanking and we're at, 1.8% of a Bitcoin is actually very high. Like, I don't know if you remember, Doug, but when we first jumped into it, like, we were going back and forth, up and down, and this is basically where the ceiling was for us when we first got into it last year.
Yeah. Remember you're trying to break through 18, right?
Yeah, and we hit 19, and then it went back to like 10.
That's when we actually consulted Tone Bays. Remember, I wanted to do that.
Yeah, I remember that.
That was funny.
Yeah, and
what a waste of 0.1 Bitcoin.
Oh yeah, dude, that was a terrible.
No, that was fun. It was fun to talk to him.
It was cool, but the thing is, though, like, if you look at, I wish I could do screen share right now. Let me see your entire screen share. No, it's destroying itself. Let me see.
I've gotten so much value out of Tone Bays, as the fact is, I do.
There we go. Do you see what I'm looking at now?
Yeah.
You see this? So like, just looking, I'll use Polo. Zoomed out, look at that uptrend. Like, look at this general uptrend we have against Bitcoin. Okay. And now if we look at all these other, pump and dump bullshit coins, like, let's look at Ethereum. All right. Big pump, settled around the middle. Like, that is not a huge uptrend,
Right.
Literally just chop forever.
Monero's just slowly catching up.
Yeah, look at Ripple. massive pump, full retrace, massive pump to the same height, and it will do a full retrace again. That's your definition of a scam pump and dump coin, but it has so much down pressure because, you know, like the CEO of Ripple 5 years ago from the lawsuit is allowed to dump like a maximum amount of coins he's got, and he's got like 1 billion coins to offload. So
Right.
he'll be dumping that for the next like 3 years. So until they find a way to get someone to actually use Ripple,
I mean, it is settling higher than what it was but still, it's not as significant.
But you know what though? Tell me at the next point it makes its rally, because we're going back to what I think will be where this reset. Like this started at, you know, like 500, 600 Satoshis, and it ended up at 1,200 Satoshis. I think we'll end up like, honestly, we're gonna end up like right here. Like it doubled its base. This will double its base. So, you know, we're gonna end up like over here. And we're close already.
How about Litecoin? What's its
yeah, like Litecoin's another one. Like,
oh yeah,
you know,
wait,
like huge humps. Yeah, this is Litecoin. So like Litecoin, even right now, Litecoin looks like it's a terrible looking chart. Like TA would tell you this is gonna do nothing but bleed to death, especially with the cross on the averages. But like, I mean, you got to remember the problem with Litecoin is look at its overall history. Like this is disgusting to look at. Like at one time, it was 3.5% of a Bitcoin, you know, and then it bled out to 0.5% of Bitcoin, and then it went back to 3%, and that, like, this thing has been pumped and dumped so often that it's like after that 2 year period of just death and destruction, I don't see why this won't end up continuing to bleed out. You know, miners are just mining it because it's easier.
The original altcoin.
Yeah, I think it's more obvious to people that this is strictly a test bed for Bitcoin. And I don't think you'll see another big rally on Litecoin until Bitcoin gets blocked on, you know, its governance again. Like, okay, no one could agree we should add schnorr sigs, or miners don't want to upgrade and add fungibility because people are saying it'll break, you know, AML and KYC laws. Like, once we have some huge debate in Bitcoin again, like scalability was, then you'll see Litecoin shine because they'll take whatever the Bitcoin devs have built and just activate it on Litecoin and pump. Until that happens, I don't see why anyone's going to buy it, so I'd stay away from that. But Monero, that uptrend.
Yeah, I mean, you know, that's the other part of my basic investment thesis too. Like, so other than Monero potentially being the true crypto, if it's gonna survive, it's gonna have to be at least, you know, like 5% of Bitcoin's market cap or something, right? I mean, I can't imagine it being like a 1% of Bitcoin's market cap and being in a Bitcoin and surviving when it's the fungible version.
Well, so you have two different key thoughts that battle each other on this, and I really wish regulation wasn't such a concern. So you have people concerned about regulation, what governments might try to do with Monero, which you know, we spoke about last episode. But then you have on the plus side with Tari, and how basically that's going to be, it's, you know, they're not doing an ICO, they're launching a platform where I guess Tari tokens will be pegged 1-to-1 with Monero or whatever it might be, 10-to-1, but you need to own Monero to use Tari. That to me is going to do what ICOs did for Ethereum, where we watched Ethereum go from, you know, $3 to $400 in 3 months, you know, or 6 months, because people were just out of their minds dying to get into all these ICOs. So as Tari gets launched and applications start being built on Tari, what I think is wild is you'll see even more flux on Monero because people have to own Monero. And then you don't cash out of Monero to use a new token. You're using the pegged Tari token. And so that money doesn't leave the space. Like with Ethereum, you bought Ethereum, then you traded it for some bullshit coin you got scammed into. And then those companies sold Ethereum for cash and left the system. Here, you're going to have companies raising Monero on their platform, but it's always going to be in Monero. They're not giving you some scam coin. You're using Monero to purchase, you know, stuff on their platform directly. I think that's just going to drive the demand for Monero up, and the supply is not going to be reintroduced to the system. I think that would get really crazy.
Yeah, I mean, so do you see it as essentially it's going to be ICOs that are going to be launched using Tari, or you're just not talking about like these other type of assets?
I think what's going to happen is people will launch services, kind of like how Lightning is just layer 2 on Bitcoin. Tari is going to be layer 2 on Monero, and I think you're going to see services offered on Tari that obviously accept Monero, and not so much ICOs on Monero. You know, because like for an ICO, like you really need smart contracts, which Monero is not focusing on at all, and that, you know, that just leads to blockchain bloat and stuff like that. At the end of the day, you're bypassing these get-rich-quick schemes and scam coins, which a year from now everyone's going to know just ICOs are trash when they don't deliver on anything they've promised. So I think that model's gone. But when you have services in Monero, I think that'll drive the price way up. And the demand will skyrocket and the supply will drop, and you'll have those crazy moonshots that we saw last year with all the cryptos.
Yeah. No, the alts aren't going anywhere. All right. Yeah, we should cut it off, but we're gonna have to get more and more into Tari. I think a lot of people are trying to figure out what exactly it is. I know it's like, I mean, Fluffy kind of explains it as being like what is it, color coins?
Yeah,
you know, like that for Monero. So you could launch non-fungible assets.
Let's see how dev goes.
Like stocks and things like that.
Yeah.
So we should definitely investigate that further and try to talk about that as we learn more about it.
Definitely. See what we can find. See what we can scrape together.
All right, man.
All right. Punch
when do you start showing your face?
I got to get a cam. And then I'll just wear a mask.
All right, man. I'll talk to you later.